Denjiman の他にまたしてもサンバルカン。
I hope you enjoyed that reference, because that's about all you're gonna get. Welcome, everyone, to Taiyo Sentai Sun Vulcan. Denji Sentai Denjiman brought a substantial evolution to the Super Sentai formula. Not only did it expand upon concepts introduced in Battle Fever, but it also brought forth a lot of new ideas and had a much more elaborate and interesting plotline than any Sentai that had come before. Toei still had one more show to make under the Marvel contract, and with Denjiman's popularity, they weren't quite ready to let go of it. So, when it came time for Denjiman's finale, they made sure to end the final episode on an open-ended note, with Queen Hedrion swearing to come back, setting up the next season as a direct continuation, something that had never been done before in Sentai. You could argue that Jacka was a continuation of Go Ranger, what with their team-up movie and everything, but Jacka still very much stands on its own. Aside from that movie, the actual show has absolutely no connection to Go Ranger whatsoever, unless my theory about Big One's powers applies. This show, on the other hand, would make an effort to expand upon certain plotlines directly from Denjiman, while still doing its own thing. Original plans were for the show to be called Plasma Man, and feature the Denjiman cast making cameos alongside our new Rangers. However, the actors proved unavailable, so the plan was ultimately scrapped in favor of making it a little more standalone. Speaking of our new Rangers, instead of the 5-man band that all the previous shows had utilized, this one would only feature 3 Rangers. I'm not sure why it was decided to do this. Maybe the original plan to include the Denjiman cast influenced this decision, as having too many characters to focus on could prove problematic. Still, the 3-man format is something that comes back a lot in Sentai, and we have this show to thank for that. Finally, the show's name was decided: Taiyo Sentai Sun Vulcan. Rather than the large-scale alien invasion plot from Denjiman, Sun Vulcan would be a bit more grounded, akin to Go Ranger, with the focus being solely on Earth and protecting the environment. So, we have a new cast of characters, new villains, at least for the most part, and a new setting. Speaking of that setting, this show was the 5th Sentai, and Toei very much marketed as such during its run, with all these promos of the 5 Reds together, and the show itself harkening back to Go Ranger in a lot of ways, which will become very obvious as we go. Everyone says O-Ranger was the first Sentai to acknowledge the Ishinomori shows as part of the Sentai franchise, but the story is a lot more complicated than that. Just know that, as of the time of Sun Vulcan's airing, Go Ranger and Jacka are very much considered to be a part of Sentai. Shozo Uehara returned for what would be the very last time as the main writer of the show, with him distancing himself from the Sentai series after Sun Vulcan, only to return many years later. Hirohisa Soda was also heavily involved with this show, and as we all know, would take over Uehara's role as main writer after Sun Vulcan. So, did Sun Vulcan succeed as a sequel to Denjiman, or even as its own standalone show? Alright, I'm sure you all read the title, so it's no use keeping you in suspense here. I apologize in advance to the people in my comments who said Sun Vulcan was one of their favorite seasons. This video might not be super pleasant for you, but I hope you can at least understand my perspective. I'm not very fond of Sun Vulcan. I'll get into everything I find wrong with this show over the course of the video, but I want to make my stance clear right at the beginning. This is the first episode of the Super Sentai Retrospective where I genuinely, actively dislike the show I'm talking about. Even with shows like Battle Fever J or the second half of Jacko, where I didn't think they were particularly good, I still had a fun time watching them, and there were a lot of aspects about them that I did like. Jacka in its first half was genuinely great before the quality drop, and Bamba, despite what he represented, was a very fun character. Battle Fever, despite the issues I had with the show, was still a fun ride all the way through, and there were plenty of aspects about it that I did like. The same is not true for Sun Vulcan in my opinion. Now of course, if you do like Sun Vulcan, that's perfectly alright. In fact, I invite you to write down in the comments why you like this show so much. I'm always open to discussion about these things. I also don't want this video to just be me ragging on this show for an hour. I will talk about positive aspects and things I like when the opportunity arises because, as much as I don't like this show, I always try my best to find the positives in anything, few as they may be. I consider myself to be pretty lenient on the quality of these shows. In fact, out of all the Sentais that I've seen, Sun Vulcan's the only one that I really don't like. Now, I haven't seen every Sentai, so that could very well change in the future, but I've seen about half of this whole franchise at this point, and I've at least liked, if not loved, most of it. So, true to my word, let's start right off with a positive. The opening. It's great. I really, really like this song. It's a lot more tropical sounding, if that makes sense, fitting with the sun motif the show is going for. I think the vocals are really good, and I especially love the follow the sun, catch the sun part. This is honestly one of my favorite openings in the Showa era. It was sung by Akira Kushida, along with every other song in this show, and he's really good. He actually has quite a few music credits in other Sentai, so be ready to hear more of him. I also really like the lyrics in this song, which is something I don't usually pay attention to, since, they're in Japanese and I can't understand them anyway. But reading the translation and the subtitles, I really like how the song is entirely about how important the sun is to life on Earth. It's just really wholesome, and it tells you what this team is all about, which is protecting not only the people, but the whole Earth from evil. The first episode, The Machine Empire on the North Pole, opens on some icy mountains on, well, the North Pole, as a submarine from the Guardians of World Peace rises from the ocean, being watched by our villains. So far, so familiar. We see our main villain, Hell Saturn, as he sends a bunch of mooks to intercept the submarine. This guy's got a pretty cool looking design. He looks like a mix of Darth Vader and an ice warrior from Doctor Who. This giant hand rises from the icebergs and shoots the submarine with a laser. A search plane gets sent to search for the submarine, and that promptly gets shot down as well. We learn that natural disasters have been terrorizing the world, and by learn, I mean we're told because we don't actually see any of this or its consequences throughout the show. Regardless, this is the work of the Machine Empire Black Magma, a cult of robot people who want to take over the world. To fight this threat, the government elects to form Sun Vulcan.
Shouldn't be here sitting, talking.
He sure is talking, alright. We cut to a man sleeping in the sunlight. His name is Ryusuke Owashi. He suddenly gets attacked by an unknown assailant. Also, this entire sequence is accompanied by Modest Mussorgsky's Night on the Bald Mountain, a piece of classical music. A weird choice to add random public domain music to your scene for no reason when you have Chume Watanabe composing your show, but okay. The mysterious woman runs off and Ryusuke's bracelet starts beeping, telling him to assemble with the others. We cut to Asao Hyo, displaying his only character trait as he eats a pancake, when a balloon flies into his hands. Okay, I'm being mean, that's not his only character trait. He's also really stupid. He gives the balloon back to this little girl before it starts ticking and he realizes it's a bomb. How the hell you put a bomb in a balloon without considerably weighing it down is beyond me, but that's neither here nor there. We see that the same woman is responsible, as Asao's own bracelet calls him. Finally, we cut to Kinya Samejima strutting on his guitar in a boat, when he gets attacked by a bunch of scuba divers. He fights them off and even cuts off one of their hands before realizing they're actually robots. Yeah, he didn't know they were robots. This guy just had no qualms about cutting off someone's hand. That's pretty badass, actually. As the woman watches him from afar, he too gets called in. They all meet up at a curry shop named Snack Safari as their commander, the owner of the place, is playing with some kids. And is it just me, or is this all feeling very, very familiar? I mean, evil cult wants to take over the world, the government forms a military team of rangers to take on the threat, their base of operations is a curry restaurant, and the owner of the restaurant is their commander. They even straight up steal this scene right from Go Ranger.
カレーライス大盛りで4枚4枚なんてとても食えたもんじゃないな2枚にしときないや4枚お頼みますいいよカレーおかわりまたかいまだ5杯目だよ腹も身の内って言うぜ
I'm pretty sure most of these Go Ranger connections were purposeful as a nod to the 5th anniversary, and I do like it. But it does feel a little derivative and unoriginal. They even do the exact same thing Go Ranger did where they place the little pieces on the thing to inform each other of who they are. Once again, a secret passage opens up behind the restaurant leading them to their base. We get a bit more exposition about who our Rangers are. Ryusuke is a pilot, Kinya is a Navy officer, and Asao is a member of the Ranger unit, and particularly close to the commander. Okay, let's talk about it. Yes, all 3 Rangers in this show are male. This team does not have a female Ranger. Thankfully, it's the only Sentai to ever do that, but it still feels weird. I know Sentai is primarily a show for young boys, but the female Rangers have always been some of the highlights of previous seasons. This becomes even more bizarre when you realize there's already a character in this show who could very easily fit the role of a female Ranger, but she just doesn't for some reason. Her name is Misa Arashiyama, and we'll get more into her later, because I have a lot to say. Shut up, Asao. I won't go too deep into this because frankly it's not my place, but there's some weirdly sexist moments in this show, particularly towards Misa. They head down and meet the commander, whose name is also Arashiyama. Huh. Yeah, it's not revealed immediately, but he is her father. He explains the situation to the Rangers, telling them they've been chosen to fight against Black Magma. We also get introduced to this dog named CC.
How dare you stand where he stood?
Unlike IC, CC falls into the same problems as other animal characters from earlier shows, where she's not important in any way and doesn't add anything into the plot. All she does is make snarky remarks towards Asao, who, in all fairness, completely deserves it, and that's it. I'm guessing she was originally meant to have some kind of relation to IC and the scrapped idea for the show, but alas. Honestly, she has absolutely no relevance to anything. The only reason I'm even mentioning her is because of her obvious IC roots. You will never be IC. The Rangers transform for the first time, and I know this is just me, but something about the way Asao yells his Ranger name is just really funny to me. It's so aggressive. They launched their ship, the Jaguar Vulcan. It looks like a jaguar. It's a pretty unique design for a ship, what with the eyes, claws, and sharp teeth. It also carries two smaller ships, the Cosmo Vulcan and the Bull Vulcan. Back in the North Pole, we learned that the woman who's been attacking the Rangers was one of 4 agents working for Black Magma, the Zero Girls, named 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively. They're pretty interchangeable and not very memorable. They create a monster using this machine, much in the same vein as the last 2 shows. The monsters in this show are called Mongers, and they all have distinct themes just like in Denjiman. It goes on the attack, and we get our first clear look at the foot soldiers, known as Machine Men. They're pretty cool looking. It's a simple design, but I really like the red lines all over the suits. It really sells the magma vibe they're going for, and it also kind of makes them look like demons. Finally, our heroes arrive at the battle. I actually really like this roll call. The animal images appearing after each ranger are cool, and later episodes have this shot of them against the sun, which looks really nice. Also, these poses are something else. They cut away from Shark's pose rather quickly. It almost makes me think the suit actor couldn't hold it for more than 2 seconds. For the first time, I can safely say we've got some genuinely great suits. I honestly have no big complaints about these. The white outlines are just the right size, they don't look cluttered, the team emblem is small enough that it doesn't take up too much space, the gloves and boots look pretty good, and these helmets are easily the best we've had so far. They're not too big, they're really well molded, and they do a good job incorporating the individual animals. The scarves still bother me a bit, but they match the rest of the suits pretty well. If I had to make one small nitpick, I'd say it's weird that Shark's helmet is the only one that doesn't have the bronze sculpture of the animal on it, instead being completely blue, but that doesn't detract from my enjoyment of these suits. These are easily the best we've seen up to this point. Once again, we get our first fight scene, and some of the moves here are surprisingly really silly and goofy, even by Sentai standards. Like, what is this? The backflip ratio in this battle is at MMPR movie levels. I do like how each ranger mimics their particular animal and their fighting style, and some of these attacks are honestly kinda cool. If you thought the Go Ranger connections weren't obvious enough, their finisher is the Vulcan Ball, where they throw this beach ball around and it hits the monster and it explodes, and yeah, this is just the Go Ranger Storm again. Like clockwork, the monster turns giant and starts destroying things, so the Rangers launch the Jaguar Vulcan. They start by just attacking the monster with missiles before they decide to send out the other ships. Cosmo Vulcan and Bull Vulcan combine to form Sun Vulcan Robo. This is the first time we've had a combining mecha in Sentai, and as I'm sure you know, this is the staple of Sentai nowadays. The rule of cool dictates that a combining robot will always be more awesome than a standalone robot. As for the robot itself, it looks pretty good. It doesn't look nearly as cheap and thrown together as the Denjiman one, and I really like the colors here. The dark blue matches really well with all the red and yellow accents, and I like the fact that the head looks like a dog. It's very unique and fits with the animal theme. We also have the sun emblem on the head, and the V-line on the chest matches the actual Ranger suits. The hands also don't look quite as goofy as Daidenjin, probably because they're smaller, and the sword design looks a lot more elaborate. They also have this cool spinning shield, as well as this claw thing. Granted, this mech is kinda lacking in the weapon department even compared to Denjiman, but still, overall, a notable upgrade. They use their finisher, Aurora Plasma Dual Slash, and...
Aurora Plasma guys! Aurora Plasma guys! Aurora Plasma guys! Aurora Plasma guys!
Get ready to hear that exact same clip every episode. They always have to say it 4 times for some reason. It got to the point where I started saying it along with them as a joke. They do this again next season, and it's just as funny. I do like the effects for the slash, with the sword leaving a rainbow trail, like sunlight reflecting off of it. They return to base after their victory, where the commander suspects an enemy spy is hiding among them. He points to his assistant, who proceeds to reveal herself as Dark Q, one of the many agents in Black Magma. And then she's promptly trapped and blown up. Damn. The ending theme is... fine. Not anything too special, but I don't hate it or anything. I like how sing-alongable it is, and Akira Kishida's voice sounds pretty good. Still, though, this is a pretty forgettable one, especially compared to the opening. Also, we get a way better ending theme later in the show, so there's that. Wait, why do they show her in the visuals for the ED in the first episode? She doesn't appear in this thing for at least a little while. Spoilers, jeez. Not much to say about the soundtrack this time around. Chumi Watanabe is still awesome, but a good chunk of the tracks in this show are reused from Battle Fever and Denjiman. Not that I blame Watanabe for not making all new tracks for this. I feel like he's starting to stretch himself a bit thin at this point. I mean, this guy pretty much single-handedly composed the soundtrack for God knows how many shows at the same time around this time period, so I understand that he might have been getting a bit tired. Huh? What's that? Watanabe is only going to be the composer for one more season after this? Oh no. We've got some great insert songs and battle music out of Sun Vulcan, though, even if most of the incidental music is ripped straight from previous shows. Episode 2 is about Black Magma trying to instigate a war between 2 countries. Now, this plot is all well and good, but for some reason they didn't bother to give actual names to the 2 countries, so they just call them Country A and Country B for the entire episode. Okay, I guess. Also, they want to spread this deadly virus over, and I quote, 10 million cities across both countries, which, what the actual hell? There's only around 10,000 cities in the entire world. Am I missing something here? Also, hey, it's Doraemon. If there's one thing I'll give Black Magma, it's that their plans are a bit more consistently serious than Vader's. While Vader was playing around with bubbles in Denjiman's second episode, these guys are out here attacking political figures and instigating conflict from the shadows. Episode 4 has a pretty standard plot about Black Magma trying to infiltrate society. We do have a really fun mech sequence where they play whack-a-mole with the monster. I wish we had more episodes in the Showa era where they use the mech in fun, creative ways like this. Oh well. Anyway, at the very end of the episode, we get an interesting cliffhanger. Yep, frozen inside an iceberg, in deep sleep, Queen Hedrion prepares to make her return. Although I'm not exactly sure what the hell she's doing frozen in a glacier. Is this what she meant when she said she'd rest at the end of Denjiman? Probably not, considering she doesn't seem to have any control of when she would even wake up. It's Hell Saturn who unfreezes her, and she doesn't even know who he is, so this obviously wasn't planned. What the hell happened to her between shows? We also learned that Hell Saturn actually has a boss, the evil god of the sun. He's an inanimate statue with an imposing voice, because Shine and Satan Agos worked so well. Regardless, it seems like Hell Saturn took some liberties when reviving Hedrion and turned her into a cyborg. So now she has this Darth Vader device on her chest holding her brand new metal heart, and a metal afro that looks like a disco ball. She's also got this weird cane now. You'd think cyborg implants would allow her to move around more easily, but okay. It's not explained by the show whether she needed these enhancements to survive or if Hell Saturn just decided to screw with her, but I'm inclined to believe in the latter. Despite their use of the word revive, it's kind of unclear whether Hedrion was even dead inside that icicle. He asks her to join him in trying to take over Earth, but she refuses. Hell Saturn reveals that her new mechanical body can't survive outside Black Magma's base, so she's quite literally stuck with them. This is why I think he purposely gave her the mechanical enhancements. He probably knew she wouldn't want to join him, so he made sure he had something to use against her. The Black Sun God also grants her a new crystal ball to replace Mira, and here's one gripe I have with Hedrion in this show. She's still great and all, and Machiko Soga still kills it with her performance, but for the most part, it kind of feels like she forgot about everything that happened at the end of Denjiman. She never so much as mentions her previous allies from Vader, and the only time we ever hear her talk about Denjiman is in a single passing line at the end of the episode. It feels like the whole Denjiman sequel idea was scrapped in favor of making a standalone show, but by the time they made that decision, Soga had already agreed to return to the role, so they just kind of went with it. From this point on, Hedrion just kind of sticks around and helps Black Magma with their plans. I do like the mixing of magic and technology they're doing here. Denjiman definitely had a theme of technology versus magic going for it, with Hedrion and the Vader clan primarily using magical abilities, whereas the Denjiman team was very much tech-based. Now we have our villains mixing both together, with Black Magma being a bunch of robots, but Hedrion being there still using her magic, and the Sun Vulcan team is a bit more balanced as well. They're not as overly techy as Denjiman. Episode 6 is just really goofy, with the monster taking control of tons of different electrical appliances and causing them to malfunction, and, Episode 7 introduces us to one of this show's recurring tropes, which is Misa getting kidnapped and having to be rescued by the team. This happens a surprising amount. It's a shame the only female character in the main cast, and arguably the best character in the main cast in my opinion, constantly gets sidelined like this. Misa is genuinely a good character and easily my favorite in this show when she's actually allowed to get any focus, but that doesn't really happen much. Seriously, why couldn't they have just made her a ranger? Some of these Black Magma plots get pretty dark. In episode 9, they kidnap a scientist who ends up dying, so they create a robot clone of him to trick the guy's son into thinking his dad is still alive. And then in the next episode, they create a robot girl to pretend to go on a date with Asao and steal information. And then in the next episode, they torture a scientist by creating a robot clone of his dead daughter. Jeez, this is a roller coaster. Episode 13 contains one of the funniest monsters I've ever seen in Sentai, named Ironmonger, who turns into a giant ball that just rolls around everywhere. It's great. Another neat innovation, at the very end of episode 16, we get a dance sequence, which will go on to become a pretty big thing in the future. It's a fun little sequence, and the song is pretty catchy. A lot of people don't like the dance songs in Sentai, and I get it, but I personally tend to enjoy them. I understand that it's not for everyone, and it can sometimes get in the way a little, but it's usually harmless. Sentai is also generally pretty good at creating some fun dance choreographies. If it seems like I'm struggling for things to say, it's because not that much really happens in this show for a while. Unlike Denjiman, which did a great job splitting its filler and story-based episodes, Sun Vulcan kind of dawdles for like 20 episodes of pure nothing burgers. I usually don't mind filler if said filler is good and enjoyable, but I don't really have any episodes that stick out to me per se. A lot of these are just kind of boring and not very interesting. Episode 22 gives us our first villain death as the team manages to take out 0-1, although the other 0 goals remain. I'm assuming the actress just wanted to leave the show because otherwise I don't know why they'd randomly kill her off like this. Thankfully, episode 23 gives us a replacement in the form of Amazon Killer, an old Vader acquaintance of Hedrion's, who she calls to join forces with Black Magma. She's played by Yuki Kagawa, who previously played a suspiciously similar villain named Amazonas in Spider-Man. Talk about getting typecast. Anyway, she pretty much fills the role of the powerful right hand that was previously occupied by characters like Salome and Hedera. She goes around enacting plans and often fighting the team herself. There's not too much to say about her, but she's pretty good. She's fairly competent, managing to sneak into the Vulcan base and destroy it from the inside, leading to us getting a new base for the rest of the show. We also get introduced to the bane of my existence, Tsukehashi Yazawa, a new chef at Snack Safari. Remember Hime from Jacka? Yeah, this guy is basically him again, except somehow more annoying and more incompetent, if that's even possible. For all his faults, at least Hime could make some decent food. This guy is so incompetent as a chef that I genuinely wonder why the commander keeps him around. He's a regular character for the rest of the show, and he's constantly getting into wacky shenanigans and somehow getting roped into Black Magma's plots. He's basically a comic relief character that the show really didn't need. Otherwise, not much else of note happens in this episode. Oh yeah. So, after this relatively normal episode, in the very last scenes after the monster is defeated, and I must stress, with absolutely no buildup in the slightest, Ryusuke leaves the team, leaving the Volt Eagle role to be replaced by Takayuki Hiba, an old colleague of his. The only explanation given is that Ryusuke has to go to work at NASA or something. Obviously, the real-life explanation is that the actor who played him was a professional singer and left the show to focus on his music career. Still, the way they write him out is honestly kind of insulting. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I give a crap about Ryusuke as a character, but he was effectively the main character of the show for the past 20-something episodes, so just tacking his exit at the very end of an otherwise unrelated episode feels wrong. In previous shows, when we lost Rangers, we got some good build-up. Even Daigoro from Go Ranger, despite being literally conceived as a temporary character who was never going to last long because Baku Takayama was going to come back eventually, still got a more dignified exit with a good focus episode and a genuinely effective death scene. Same goes for Shiraishi from Battle Fever and, minus the death scene part, Diane. You know it's bad when I'm using Diane Martin as a positive example. I actually really like the scene where Hiba takes up the mantle of Volt Eagle. I repeat, the scene. The music is really good and his transformation feels triumphant, but it only works in a vacuum. If you watch the scene in context with the rest of the episode, it feels extremely cheap and unearned. Anyway, Hiba is at least a bit of a better character than Ryusuke. I certainly remember him a little more, and he's also our first Red Ranger to use a sword. It's taken us this long, but we finally have a Swordsman Red. This is also the first and only time a Red Ranger ever gets replaced, at least permanently. Episode 29 is one of my least favorite episodes in this show for one sole reason: wasted potential. Queen Hedrion comes up with a plan to take out Sun Vulcan Robo by defending against their finisher with a sword. Obviously she doesn't want to fight them herself, so she sends out an assassin who she calls Rosemonger. She's got this cool red costume, and she attacks Hiba and gives him a run for his money, using this rose attack to disorient him. The others arrive, and she immediately switches to her monster form and turns giant. She beats up the giant robot with her special power and forces the team to retreat. Back at base, while the Rangers are trying to figure out how to take her down, Misa says she wants to take a stab at this, no pun intended. Well, maybe. Since she's a skilled fencer, she might be able to face off against the assassin. The rest of the team shuts her down though, which is understandable I guess, since she doesn't have any ranger powers, but then why not just make her a ranger? I can understand why the chief would be reluctant to let his daughter become a ranger, but still. This doesn't discourage her, however, and she decides to try anyway. Next time Black Magma attacks, they're interrupted by this mysterious fencer who, yeah, it's obviously Misa, I'm not even going to try to pretend like there's a mystery here. She's actually a pretty good fighter, easily dispatching a whole group of foot soldiers before getting away. Word of the situation reaches the team, and they wonder who it could possibly be. I'm trying really hard not to accuse this show of being blatantly sexist, but come on. This is an extremely weird line, considering the previous teams all had female members. The chief figures out that Misa is the White Rose Fencer. While Hiba is training, he gets interrupted by the two fencers who proceed to throw down. Misa tries her best and actually puts up an okay fight, but is eventually overwhelmed, revealing her identity. Just as she's about to be killed, she gets saved by Hiba and the others, who realize what Misa was doing. Misa did all of this because she wanted to be a warrior too and help the other three in battle. Anyway, Hiba figured out the trick to the evil fencer's attacks, so they go to confront her. They beat her, she goes giant, they beat her again, done. I've already mentioned that Misa is one of the few characters in this show I don't hate, mostly because she actually has a personality that isn't bland, or annoying. But another reason is that she seems to get constantly mistreated by the show itself. She gets captured constantly, she never really gets to go out on the field and help the Rangers fight. She bafflingly doesn't get to be a Ranger herself, and the one time she actually does try to do something of note and fight a monster, the others don't seem to take her seriously at all, just commenting on how she's being silly for putting herself in danger. My main problem is that Misa never gets to try again. This is the only episode where she gets to use her White Rose persona. How cool would it be if she kept trying, if she kept on training to become a better fighter, eventually becoming a sort of honorary ranger? It would be a neat little arc for her character, and it would somewhat mitigate the lack of a proper female ranger for this season. See Leiko Ninjago for an example on how this type of storyline can be done well, but no. Instead, she just gives up and goes right back to her regular role of just being there and sometimes getting in trouble for the others to save her, or to get hit on by Asao and Tsukihachi. Yeah, that's a thing. Make of it what you will. TLDR, Misa is a good character who deserves a better show than this. Episode 34 is the fun one, as the monster revives some historical figures to haunt people. Joan of Arc, Billy the Kid, and Count Dracula. Not Vlad the Impaler, the actual historical figure that the legend is based on, no. Count Dracula, the blood-sucking, woman-biting vampire, whose actor seems to be doing his best Bela Lugosi impression, along with this glorious set of fake vampire teeth. So basically, Dracula is real in this universe, I guess. All these characters are portrayed by actors who either have or will appear in other Sentai seasons in some shape or form. This episode also gives us a new ending theme, which I alluded to earlier, and as I said, this is way better than the first one. This song is much more fast-paced and fun than before, with a much more energetic beat. It's also very sing-alongable, which is always appreciated. That countdown gets stuck in your head. I still don't like it quite as much as the opening, but I actually do find myself listening to this one from time to time. We're well over halfway through the show at this point, and aside from Queen Hedrion just being here, it's very easy to forget that this is supposed to be related to Denjiman in any way. Originally, there had been plans to connect the two a lot more, including a team-up in the style of Jacka vs. Go Ranger, but that was unfortunately scrapped, and the only thing we have left of it are these promotional images featuring the two teams together. This gives us an interesting look into what could have been, but ultimately it never happened. What we did get was 2 episodes of Sun Vulcan dedicated to a Denjiman tie-in, so let's see how these fare. Episode 36 is titled Esper.
Jasmine, Esper である.
No, not yet. It'll be a while before we get to that. Anyway, we open on the scene of a car accident as a nun has a vision of what's happening. We learn that her name is Himiko, and she can see into the future thanks to her special powers of precognition. At Black Magma Base, Queen Hedrion is practicing her own psychic powers when she's interrupted by a sudden, painful signal. As the others try to help, she realizes where the signal is coming from. I like that they give us a full rundown of Denjiman's backstory, complete with all the footage from that show. It's nice being reminded of how much better it was. They do. I thought you already knew this? We met some of them in Denjiman. Did we just forget about Not Battle France over here? I mean, I don't blame you. Actually, considering Hedrion specifically uses the word living, I'll just go ahead and assume Paul died off screen at some point. Same goes for that lady from the movie. Rest in pieces. Of course, another idea is that maybe Sun Vulcan takes place much farther in the future after Denjiman than we thought, but that also doesn't really make much sense, since we're clearly still in the 1980s. Hedrion orders Black Magma to start hunting down anyone they suspect of being an Esper, in hopes that they'll find whoever is responsible for the signal. And these freaking idiots decide that this random magician doing a show is apparently suspicious. Like, I know these guys aren't from Earth, but seriously? You can't possibly think these basic card tricks are proof of ESP. I do think it's kind of funny that they go after this Esper on a talk show. I like that it's left kind of ambiguous whether this guy's powers are real or not. His name is Occult Joe, which sounds like the fakest thing ever, but he seems genuinely surprised by the vision he gets of his own death, and then Black Magma show up. Of course, the Rangers appear to save him, so that vision wasn't exactly accurate anyway, but still. Also, hey, it's Snoopy. It turns out that the previously seen Esper Himiko has a sister named Kamiko, who she asks Sun Vulcan to protect. Shut up, Asao. The sign says she can predict the future up to 2001. Did she see 9/11 coming? Anyway, they save her before Black Magma can get to her, as the chief explains to the team about the Denjians and their descendants, once again recapping the Denjiman plot. We learn a bit about Himiko's backstory, as she used to be a model but was constantly pained by her visions, constantly seeing the deaths of people around her. She resorted to becoming a nun so she could pray for the salvation of those souls. As Himiko comes to visit her sister to warn her about another vision, we get one of the most ridiculous chase scenes I've ever seen in my life. Somehow this girl's psychic powers allow her to roller skate faster than a motorcycle, and the effects in this scene are just glorious. And this works! She manages to outrun Kinya on her psychic heelys, returning to the church. Black Magma attacks the team, and we get a pretty cool darkroom fight with furniture being thrown around everywhere until the Rangers manage to get outside and face the Monger. Oh yeah, by the way, the monster in this episode is called Satan Monger, and he's literally a demon. That's cool, I guess. They almost manage to take him down, but he gets away. Not only that, but Kamiko also gets injured, and we end the first part with her in the hospital. Of course, Hedrion's headache doesn't stop, so she realizes there's another Esper to deal with, leading us into episode 37, Himiko. Sun Vulcan continues protecting Kamiko from Black Magma. They also try to find her sister. When they do, she reveals her whole backstory to them, which is when Kinya explains that she's a descendant of the Denjians, finally giving her the answers she always wanted about where her powers come from. I love that they play the Princess Denji theme music from Denjiman in these scenes. It's a really nice way of connecting back to that atmosphere. She has a vision of her sister getting captured and warns the team to be on the lookout. Which of course means they immediately let her get taken. Good job, Asao! Of course, in typical Sentai villain fashion, they elect to lock all the Espers up instead of just killing them right then and there. I know this is a recurring thing that's been prominent since Go Ranger, but it kind of feels more egregious here when they've spent the entire two-parter talking about how they need to kill these people, and then when they finally have them in the palm of their hand, they just don't.
Misa-chan, ちょっと外に出らんないんだよ。ミサちゃん代わりに行って。どうして出らんないの？僕はほら、超能力者でしょ？なあ、だから誘拐されると困るの。
Shut up, Tsukayashi. Black Magma decides to pull a Jacka and put all the Espers in gas chambers. Where's Bon Bittler when you need him? Himiko uses her power to communicate directly with Hedrion, calling her to her location. She's apparently learned to control her powers since learning about their origin, since she can now create force fields that stop the enemy bullets. Not sure when she had the time to do that, but okay. Regardless, she does a remarkable job kicking all their asses herself, and even comes close to killing Hedrion before Satan Monger overpowers her with his own ESP. But of course, before Hedrion can finish her off, Sun Vulcan step in to save the day. They take out the monster by exercising him with a cross, a fitting end. Turns out her overexerting her powers has burned them out, so they're a lot weaker. However, Himiko still decides to stay in the monastery in hopes of one day finding Princess Denji. So I like this two-parter enough. It's a nice little way to tie into Denjiman and actually justify this being called a sequel. I like that they're consistent with Denjiman's original plot, for the most part, and I love that they reuse parts of the soundtrack. Still, this doesn't really add much to Sun Vulcan itself. This is the only part of the show, aside from Queen Hedrion, that actually connect to Denjiman in any way, and it leaves me wanting more. I don't think these episodes are really great by any means, but by Sun Vulcan standards, they were rather pleasant. I really wish we'd gotten that planned team up, but I guess this is a suitable consolation prize. Episode 38 is one of the few episodes that actually tries to develop Asao a little. We get to meet his father, Ataro, who doesn't want his son to fight for Sun Vulcan. Yes, at this point we've seen this type of plotline done to death with plenty of other Sentais, but this was the first one, and it still works, I guess. It doesn't make me like Asao any more than I do, though. He's just as thoroughly annoying here as he is in the rest of the show. Fun fact, Ataro is actually played by the real-life father of Asao's actor. That's neat. I always enjoy when the actors' families show up in the show, that's fun. Episode 40 is interesting. It follows this Batmonger, who very nearly manages to kill Hiba. He goes around biting people to turn them into vampire slaves, and again with the marshmallow fake bat teeth? Also, hey, it's Mickey. Episode 43 is probably the most interesting episode in the show because it predicted the future. Black Magma creates a device that's capable of answering any question you give it. They give it to a bunch of kids who start using it to cheat on tests and avoid their studies. The kids become so addicted to using the device to do everything for them that they stop putting effort into anything. Yes, this is a cautionary tale about smartphones and over-reliance on technology decades before any of that tech was actually available. I'll let Chief Arashiyama spell it out.
Mecha は便利だ。だが使い方を間違えれば人間の頭脳を低下させ、やがては人間をダメにしてしまうだろう。
I know this might come off as kind of a generic phone bad type of message, but back then this was a pretty reasonable concern to have. I actually appreciate what they were trying to do here. Episode 44 teases us with something that never happens. Commander Arashiyama announces that Sun Vulcan will be receiving a brand new weapon to aid them in battle. A robot, to be precise. That sounds cool. This would be the first time a Sentai ever gets 2 giant robots instead of 1. I wonder how it Oh, that's Battle Fever Robo being reused. This entire episode pretty much results in nothing because we never get the new robot. I don't know why they made this the plot for the episode if they weren't going to commit to it. Obviously it makes sense that they wouldn't add a new weapon here of all places since we're literally about to get to the final stretch of episodes, but why did they set it up this way then? Speaking of which, episode 45 introduces us to a brand new threat, Inazuma Ginga. He's this cool ninja-looking dude who arrives in a bolt of lightning. I like his design. He really looks like a shogun, and this shuriken-shaped helmet is pretty cool. Wonder if we'll ever see a design like that again. After zapping some soldiers and stealing a bunch of stuff, he engages Sun Vulcan. Black Magma also seems surprised by his sudden appearance, but Amazon Killer has a slightly different reaction, seeming to know who he is. He's really strong, and he's a good enough sword fighter to rival Hiba. The Rangers retreat, seeing that they have no chance of actually beating this guy. Hell Saturn requests that they try to recruit this new warrior, where Amazon Killer finally explains what his deal is. He's an intergalactic outlaw who's extremely dangerous, and the two clearly have prior history together. They used to work together, bringing chaos across the galaxy. He actually tries to convince her to betray the Empire, but she stands resolute, so he tries to spread rumors about her to Hell Saturn to overtake her position in Black Magma. In order to combat Inazuma Ginga, Sun Vulcan develops a new, more powerful version of the Vulcan Ball. Instead of a regular soccer ball, they now throw 3 footballs into the air before combining them into a bigger, spiky ball that they kick at the enemy. Is it just me, or does this attack feel a little contrived, even for Sentai standards?
おいみんな勉強だけはちゃんとしとけよそうでないとお兄ちゃんみたいになるよ
Damn it, that line delivery was so close to actually being kind of funny, but he had to ruin it with his annoying-ass laugh. Anyway, Amazon Killer shows up and threatens Misa to give them info on Sun Vulcan. And hey, Sukachi actually tries to defend her. Good for him, even if he gets instantly knocked out. They kidnap the children and leave. Oh no, what shall we do against these boxing machine men? After the monster becomes a live punching bag for our new special and the giant battle is over with, the episode ends with Inazuma Ginga officially joining Black Magma. As Sun Vulcan gets tipped off about a Black Magma attack, they begin to wonder if there's a spy in the organization. Well, this is familiar. Hedrion declares that Inazuma Ginga is the traitor and demands to have him killed, because that worked so well for her last time. They chuck him into the Rancor pit from Return of the Jedi. Hell Saturn wonders why Hedrion seems so adamant about this, but she shrugs it off. So yeah, this whole thing is a plan from Hedrion and Amazon Killer to overthrow Hell Saturn. Not that it works, since Hell Saturn just lets Inazuma Ginga out of the cage anyway. He creates a super fighting monster based on himself that he sends out to beat up Sun Vulcan, and it puts up a good fight, blocking their finisher. While they're busy figuring out how to get through this, Hedrion seemingly receives a vision. She tries convincing Hell Saturn that he's in danger, but he's not exactly the most trusting of her right now, and he seems pretty taken with Inazuma Ginga.
この暗雲に覆われた歴代の王たちはいずれも刺客の刃に倒れておる
Is that a Star Wars reference? I'm gonna go ahead and say that's a Star Wars reference. Speaking of Inazuma Ginga, his next strategy to deal with Sun Vulcan is to just straight up shoot them with guns. How come we haven't tried that yet? Still, they manage to hit him and injure him pretty bad. When Hell Saturn messes with Ginga's monster, he chooses violence as he attacks the Black Sun God, which pisses Hell Saturn off. The two begin to fight, and if there's one thing Sentai's been getting really good at, it's villain-on-villain battles. We have some cool set pieces here, like these 2 trains they jump around on and this weird blue void, which isn't the greatest effect in the world, but it's still a neat idea. Just when it seems like Hell Saturn has the upper hand, Ginga shoots him with his Andromeda Bomb, which freaking decapitates him. Since he proved himself stronger, he's supposed to become the new leader of Black Magma, but the rest of the clan nominates Hedrion instead.
ついに夢が叶ったぞあ
Ah yes, her lifelong dream of ruling this empire that she only met like a year ago. Still, she doesn't get to enjoy it for very long as the schizophrenia meds run out. She starts seeing visions of Hell Saturn, implying that he's still around even as a ghost. He talks to her in her dreams, knowing she planned to overtake him all along, and threatens her, but disappears shortly after. As she and Amazon Killer panic to find out what's going on, Hell Saturn meets with the Black Sun God, and we finally get to see his true form. A brain in a glass ball. Oh boy, here we go again. We find out that he was the one who resurrected Hell Saturn as a phantom projection. Meanwhile, Amazon Killer manages to capture Hiba using Mummy Monger, but Inazuma Ginga manages to intercept the plan. He contacts the team and tells them to give him Jaguar Vulcan in exchange for Hiba's life. He gives them 1 hour to try and figure out what to do. As time runs out, the chief decides to meet Ginga's demands, so they bring Jaguar Vulcan to the meeting spot. They bring out Sun Vulcan Robo and Ginga hops on, ready to wreak havoc, but Hiba manages to trick Mummy Monger into setting him free. Reunited with his team-ups, they kick Inazuma Ginga out of the mech. Good job, buddy, you won for a total of 2 minutes. Still, he manages to escape as Sun Vulcan defeats the monster, coming back to Hedrion and Amazon Killer scolding him for going off on his own. Hedrion continues to have weird dreams of Hell Saturn threatening her, and she slowly starts deteriorating, much to Amazon Killer's dismay. They plan to transplant a new heart to replace her rusting one, but she sees it as an attempt to kill her and refuses. Hang on, I thought you trusted Amazon Killer. Why are you so suspicious of her all of a sudden? I guess you could say she's paranoid with everything going on, but still. Of course, Inazuma Ginga takes the opportunity to stir the pot and add to the chaos. Hedrion hides away to try and solve the problem herself. Still, she's the queen of Black Magma, so she does try to enact a plan. She uses her psychic powers to... Sorry, she uses her psychic powers to kidnap Misa. Again. I'd complain a bit more if it weren't for this fucking effect. This is just funny, man. Hedrion plans to sacrifice Misa to the Black Sun God. She still decides to broadcast this whole thing to Sun Vulcan for some reason. I guess she wants them to suffer seeing this, but it feels kinda dumb to expose your whole plan like this. However, Hell Saturn intervenes before she can stab Misa, stopping the Queen's heart, which gives Sun Vulcan some time to come save her. They deduce that Black Magma must have some kind of transmitter on Earth to be able to send them messages like this, so they try to find it. We get this surprisingly nice scene of the chief looking at wedding dresses on a magazine, struggling with the thought that he might never get to see his daughter wear one. It borders on a bit cheesy with the running scenes, but it works. Meanwhile, Hedrion continues to die slowly, to the point where she can't perform the sacrifice ritual, so Amazon Killer decides to do it herself. But before she can, Inazuma Ginga stops her, saying he wants to ransom her life in exchange for Jaguar Vulcan. My guy, you literally just failed to pull off this exact plan 1 episode ago. What are you doing? Suddenly, the Dark Sun God finally decides to make his appearance to the other members, and orders that Inazuma Ginga be remodeled into a Monger. He gets placed into the machine and gets transformed into Lightning Monger. Similarly to Header Monster from Battle Fever, this is pretty dark, though it's not quite as creepy here. I do like the design though, he looks like a powered up mook. He goes to fight against Sun Vulcan with Amazon Killer, and we get the usual spiel. After they destroy him, Amazon Killer pays her respects, showing that she did somewhat care about him. We end on Sun Vulcan still searching for the Black Magma's base to find Misa, leading us into the final episode, The Shining Aurora Borealis. Amazon Killer tries to figure out where the Dark Sun God is hiding, and finds a hidden door in the wall leading to his chamber. She threatens to kill him, but he convinces her to help him with his plan. Now, to give this show credit where it's due, this next part is really clever. Remember way back in the very first episode when that plane got shot down? Yeah, since that plane belonged to the Guardians of Peace, they actually have a record of the location where it went down. Commander Arashiyama uses these records to pinpoint the location of Black Magma's base. Now, one could wonder why they've never tried this before, but Black Magma had just emerged for the first time when that happened, so they probably didn't think all the way back then that it was them who destroyed the plane. Bringing back something that happened right at the start of the first episode and making it a plot point in the finale is something I definitely didn't expect. Good on you, Sun Vulcan. The Rangers head to the North Pole with the commander on board to save Misa. Their suspicions are confirmed once they arrive and are immediately threatened with machine men. And yeah, the shots of them fighting in the snow look pretty cool. They find the entrance and head in, where they find themselves in a familiar main chamber. The Black Sun God welcomes them and gives us this interesting line. Over the course of this show, it's been left pretty ambiguous what the Black Sun God actually is. Your first assumption would be that he's, well, a god, or at least some kind of all-powerful alien like, say, Satan Agos from Battle Fever J. They even call him Omnipotent God on a lot of occasions, but this line seems to imply that he's a computer of some sort. The only real godlike power we've seen him display so far has been the phantom projections of Hell Saturn, but that could just as easily be a really advanced hologram, and we know Hell Saturn's body was robotic. It's also interesting that his physical appearance is a brain on a glass ball. It's possible he was human at some point, but slowly turned himself into this cold, unfeeling machine. Just some food for thought. Misa sees her friends but can't call out to them. The Dark Sun God challenges Sun Vulcan to a fight to the death against Amazon Killer. So, did Hedrion just die off screen? That's a really cheap way to axe off a character who's been here for double the amount of time as everyone else. I'm only a little bit upset. The arena where this takes place is pretty cool looking with these snowy hills, even if the obvious background wallpaper is obvious. We get one final roll call against the mountains and the fight begins. I like that Amazon Killer gets to do her own roll call too. It's not often that we get villains doing this kind of thing. The heroes pull out all the stops, using their most powerful attacks, but Amazon Killer is no slouch, delivering some heavy hits herself. Still, once they use the finisher, she finally gives out. In probably one of the most over-the-top, over-dramatic villain deaths I have ever seen. But not before telling the team exactly where to find the Black Sun God. It's then that we remember that the Rangers have very much not been made aware of what's been going on inside Black Magma when they ask what happened to all the other leaders. The Black Sun God simply replies that they're all dead, in a probably accidental but still worth mentioning parallel to Queen Hedrion's last words at the end of Denjiman. But whereas she lamented the deaths of her subordinates, the Black Sun God doesn't seem to care, seeing it as an inevitability of organic life. The overarching theme of this show has been man versus machine, so it makes sense to set up the final battle this way. The Rangers break down everything inside the chamber, but before they can reach the big bad, they have to fight the Zero Girls inside the giant robot. The Zero Girls use the robot's power to create a solar eclipse, freezing Sun Vulcan Robo and blocking out their weapon. Yes, this whole time, this robot has been solar powered. I know I shouldn't be surprised considering what the show is about, but the idea of a solar-powered giant robot is very funny to me. They start beating on Sun Vulcan Robo while the Rangers are powerless to do anything, but suddenly, an Aurora Borealis appears, giving them just enough power to strike back.
Aurora Borealis. At this time of year, at this time of day, in this part of the country, localized entirely within
Black Magma's base. It's pretty contrived, but whatever. With the Zero Girls defeated, it's time to finally face off against Mother Brain. They find his chamber, as well as Misa, being held by projections of all the other villains, their personalities having been completely replaced by cold, hard machine logic. The Black Sun God gives a whole speech about how humans are weak and machines will thrive, and orders them to get on their knees and beg for mercy, telling them that he'll kill Misa if they step closer. However, Chief Arashiyama sees through the ploy, realizing that the Misa in this room isn't the real deal, but another projection. Of course, he knows that if he's wrong, his actions right now will result in her death, but he takes the risk, attacking the Black Sun God with the Vulcan stick. Turns out he's right, as all the projections disappear, but a bomb starts ticking down in the room. They run to find Misa's cage, save her and escape just before the bomb explodes, bringing the entire base down with it. With the battle finished, we get one last scene of the Rangers expositing about what they'll do with their lives now, as well as a little slideshow of each of them fighting. Of course, the show can't go without one last bit of cringe for the road, as all three Rangers try to argue about who will marry Misa. She rightfully ignores them and just decides to enjoy her life now that the world is at peace. As our heroes walk off, we come to the end of Taiyo Sentai Sun Vulcan. So, that was a lot. Honestly, despite how much I've ragged on the show, this finale was rather strong. It could have been stronger if I actually cared about what came before, but as is, I did feel relatively satisfied. Though I'm mostly just relieved I never have to actually watch this again. Let's say we get this over with and talk about our characters, starting with the Rangers themselves. These three are quite possibly my least favorite Ranger team in the entire franchise, at least from what I've seen. Two of them left absolutely no impression on me whatsoever, and the one that did left a bad one. Starting with Hiba and Kinya, and yes, I'll be talking about them together, these two are the blandest, most nothing characters ever. Well, I guess Hiba at least has a cool sword, which puts him above his eagle predecessor in my eyes, but I genuinely could not tell what these guys' personality were, aside from heroic. I think it's worse with Kinya, because I don't remember anything this guy even did. He is as much of a blank slate now as he was before I watched the show. And then we have the big one, the stinker, this dude. Asao Hyo, Vol Panther. I cannot stand this guy. I'll give him this. Out of all three main Rangers, at least he had a personality that I could remember. He's the goofy comic relief. He's energetic, boisterous, a big eater, and very obnoxious. It's funny because, just from those descriptive adjectives I used, he sounds pretty similar to Daita from Go Ranger, who, if you'll remember, is a character I like. But there are a few small differences that put these two worlds apart to me. For one, Asao isn't nearly as charming as Daita, and his shtick gets old really quick. It also doesn't help that Asao is kind of a pervert, which is a surefire way to make your character less likable from the get-go. I think the big difference, though, comes down to performance. Bakuhei Takayama's performance as Daita wasn't Oscar-worthy or anything, but it was down to earth. Even at his silliest, the way Daita spoke and carried himself still made him feel like a real human being. Asao, on the other hand, is the key definition of overacting in the worst way. It feels like every single line of his has to be screamed at this exact cadence! I don't know if this is due to the actor himself or the direction, but every time he spoke, I wanted to grind his face into the floor. Although in this case, I'm actually not as opposed to personal attacks against the actor like I usually am. Yeah, I couldn't talk about this character without mentioning that, so get ready. Possible trigger warning here, I'll put it up on the screen. Around mid-2013, Asao Kobayashi, the actor who played his namesake, was arrested for, and I'm quoting this from the wiki, soliciting a high school girl from Aomori Prefecture and sexually assaulting her in an apartment on April 22nd from 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. He also took pictures, which qualifies as production of CP, so he was also charged with that too. So yeah, he is a disgusting human being, and I have absolutely no problem ragging on him directly. Even separating the art from the artist, I don't like this character anyway, so it's not like this changes anything. Moving away from all that, let's talk about the two characters who made this show worth watching. Misa and Daizaburo Arashiyama. I already said my piece about how Misa deserved way better than what she got, but I was honestly surprised by how much I liked Chief Arashiyama. He was played by the late Shin Kishida, who sadly passed away only 11 months after the final episode of Sun Vulcan. He actually had some amount of depth compared to other military commanders from previous seasons. He cared deeply for his daughter, he had some pretty good comedic moments here and there, and he was generally a nice presence. I also love that he was the one who got the final blow against the Black Sun God. How often do you see that happen? Speaking of which, let's talk about the villains, starting with Hell Saturn. He's nothing to write home about. He was okay. I love his design, and he was decently intimidating, but at the end of the day, he was just a puppet for the big bad. Then we have Amazon Killer, who had a bit more depth, and I actually would say she was slightly more interesting than Salome and Hedra. I liked her dynamics with Inazuma Ginga and Queen Hedrion, and she was very honorable to the end. Inazuma Ginga is the weird character. On the one hand, he fills the same role in the story as Demon King Banriki from Denjiman. being the out-of-left-field villain who shows up and starts scheming, much to the chagrin of the others. But whereas Banriki completely took over the story and ended up becoming the final villain of Denjiman, Inazuma Ginga kind of flopped in-universe. None of his plans ever actually worked. He never truly got the same victory over the other bad guys that Banriki did. Add to that his rather underwhelming ending, being turned into a manga and being defeated by the Rangers as if he was just another monster of the week, and you get a character that doesn't really do it for me. Next we have Hedrion, and I've already said a bit about how she feels a lot less interesting than she was in Denjiman. Her development at the end of that story never comes up again here, and she's pretty much relegated to repeating the exact same pattern again, only to be killed off in the most unceremonious way I could imagine. I feel like this could have been mitigated had we gotten that team-up. If said team-up had happened, I would have loved to see her be the main villain and ultimately get defeated after one last face-off against the Denjiman. Regardless, Machiko Soga still did a great job, and she had some funny moments. Finally, we arrive at the big bad himself, the Black Sun God. I'm mixed on him. On one hand, he falls into the exact same traps as Shine and Satan Agos before him. He's an unmoving force who can't go out and do anything until the Rangers show up to his lair, he doesn't have enough screen time, and he goes down way too easily with just a Vulcan stick to the face. But on the other hand, I do think he's more effective than the aforementioned two. With his phantom projections, his cold, unfeeling personality, and his taunting of other characters, heroes and villains alike, he actually comes off as pretty threatening in some moments. Honestly, I really wish we'd gotten some backstory for him, because that could have been really interesting and strengthened the villain's story overall. So that's Sun Vulcan. As a sequel to Denjiman, it pretty much fails on every level. It fails to properly continue the story of the previous seasons, save for those 2 episodes, and it fails to do justice to the one character it brings back. As a standalone show, it has some interesting ideas and some rare moments of genuine quality, but with a weak cast of characters and some really boring or at times really frustrating episodes for the most part, it stands as my least favorite Sentai that I've seen, and I was extremely happy and relieved when I finally reached the end. Still, the show was popular, with the guys at Marvel being pretty proud of it, and it having some of the highest ratings in the franchise's history, following Go Ranger and Denjiman. And hey, Stan Lee himself seemed to love it, so what do I know? In fact, Lee loved it so much that he wanted to bring it outside of Japan somehow. He had an idea for an American adaptation, but it never really went anywhere. Sound familiar? Stan's wish to bring Sentai to America would come true one day, though not by his hand. For now, though, the Toei and Marvel deal is over, and Toei is left to continue the Sentai franchise on their own. Not very long from now, Sentai will continue to evolve in more ways than one, but for the time being, Toei is content to stay on the pattern that Battle Fever started. Our next show is one that I don't think is particularly innovative when compared to what came before, so on we go. See you guys next time as we leap into Dai Sentai Goggle 5.
ありがとう太陽戦隊サンバルカンさようならサンバルカンロボ
who sadly passed away only 11 months after the final episode of Sun Vulcan. He actually had some amount of depth, not death, god damn it, why did I say death? That's,